Brought to you by AbbVie and the AbbVie Black Business Network.
My name is Sarah Collins Rudolph. I've been living in Birmingham for 69 years.
Birmingham, in terms of a industrialist or economic vision, would have been a pretty good place after World War II. But in terms of being a minority in a city like Birmingham, it was a very scary place.
One thing that I remember was how my mother had to shop for our shoes. She would have to put our feet on a piece of paper and measure our feet because downtown they wouldn't let black people try on shoes. And they wouldn't let us use the restroom, and they had signs everywhere like white and color because the fountains, if they catch black using the white fountain, they would arrest us. And the black couldn't even sit down in the bottom of the theater. We had to sit in the balcony. My father's job, he would clean tables at Joy Young Cafe. And he worked there for years. He even worked on Sunday. My daddy, he was always kind of like me, on the quiet side. But my mother, she was the talker of the family. And she wanted to raise us in church. That's one thing she made sure we did. And she would teach us how to sew. She would teach us how to play the piano. She was a housekeeper. She got a job cleaning up the hill at two nice white women's house, really nice, both of them. And the only thing about it, they wouldn't let blacks in through the front door. You know, at that time, black had to also enter all the time in the back doors. That's the way it was. That's the way I came up, you know, living in the city of Birmingham. After we came up like that, we just thought it was just the way we had to live like that forever.
I think that there has to be room for acknowledging what happened to this 12-year-old girl who, through no fault of her own, was thrust into history and then just as quickly ignored.
Well, before the bombing, I was just playing little happy girls playing like, you know, like little girls should. Through the years, part of the time that since that had happened to me, I was angry. You know, we was taught to love, you know, one another in church. But that had changed. It changed my heart.
Birmingham, Alabama, that in minority circles was referred to as Birmingham, includes a neighborhood known as Dynamite Hill, just a neighborhood that experienced over 50 bombings in less than a 10-year period, simply because people wanted to achieve adequate housing. One of my high school teachers, Reverend Calvin Woods, he would often say Birmingham is the magic city, but in so many ways it was the tragic city. And as we get to 1963, you begin that year with Governor George Wallace being inaugurated. And he makes his infamous statement.
In the name of the greatest people that have ever trod this earth, I draw the line in the dust and toss the gauntlet before the feet of tyranny, and I say segregation now, segregation tomorrow, and segregation forever.
That starts 1963 in Birmingham, Alabama. If you come to the Birmingham Civil Rights District, you can see Kelly Ingram Park, where thousands of young people marched to defy legalized segregation. And you can walk in the footsteps that these wonderful human beings walked in, and you can get an idea of what it was like to be a part of a simply transformative time in United States history. Today, you see that it is a place of revolution and reconciliation, and it truly was a place of revolution. Just as revolutionary as anything that took place in Bunker Hill, Lexington, or Concord. But the most important part is reconciliation, where people found a way to come together after a very tumultuous time. The movement in Birmingham, Alabama had been going on now for over a decade, but they toiled for a large part in silence. The world wasn't listening. But in 1963, in January, Dr. Martin Luther King joined the fight in Project C, Project Confrontation. And with Dr. King came the world through the lenses of media, national media, international media. As Dr. King said, sunlight is the best disinfectant. The highest point of Project C in Birmingham, Alabama would have been D-Day. Not Normandy, France, but Kelly Ingram Park. D-Day represented Demonstration Day. May 2nd, 1963, was the date that young people from all over the city had been waiting for. Disc jockeys on the radio stations had told them that there was going to be a party in the park and they needed to bring their toothbrush. That signaled to them that they weren't going home. Instead, these young people were going to jail. By this time in the movement, jail, no bail, had become a strategy. On May 2nd, 1963, Bull Connor arrested 1,000 young people and sent them to the Birmingham city jails. D-Day was an overwhelming success, but the leaders of the movement were not content to rest on their laurels. They did not want to waste this momentum, and so they pushed forward to May 3rd, which was going to be double D-Day. But as they made their plans, Bull Connor made his plans as well. So the Birmingham Fire Department employed their water hoses against these young people. The water hoses that could pull the bark off of the trees in this park. Here we find ourselves at the sculpture known as the Kneeling Ministers. This sculpture represents the awesome role that the clergy played in the American Civil Rights Movement. This monument was designed by the creator of the World War II monument in Washington, D.C. It is surrounded with columns, but as you look at these columns, you'll note that 4 of them are broken. And those pillars represent the broken, incomplete lives lived by Addie Mae Collins, Denise McNair, Cynthia Wesley, and Carol Roberson. And it's very powerful because you can stand right there in the middle of that monument. And if you face the northwest, you look directly at the 16th Street Baptist Church. The 16th Street Baptist Church spans the timeline of the city of Birmingham, Alabama. And it's the first black church in Birmingham to be organized back in 1873. Birmingham is founded in December of 1871, to give you an idea of how close that is. But when you're considering that proximity, it's important to consider the proximity to 1865. These individuals, in less than a decade of being emancipated, were organizing their own church buildings and businesses, and they were thriving in the city of Birmingham. And as they moved to this location where they are now, and they complete this sanctuary, it becomes known as everybody's church. Reverend Dr. Pettiford is going to be this leading figure in Birmingham. He's going to, have medical facilities for people to come and get treatment that needed it. He's going to be the president of the first African-American bank in Birmingham, Alabama. So when you think of this idea that you didn't have to be connected to the church in membership, but in some way, in some form, if it was medical care, if it was economics through the Alabama Penny Savings Bank, or if it was education through the first 4-year high school for African Americans in the city, that church had a system of roots that spanned out through the entire African American community in Birmingham, Alabama.
The 16th Street Baptist Church, it meant a lot, because that's where we grew up at, going to this church. The different people there, most of the people that attended 16th Street Baptist Church, they were very elite. Our family wasn't elite. I think our family may have been the poorest family there. But my mother carried us there so we can just grow up there, and one day we'll have the things that they have.
The morning of September 15th, 1963 was a beautiful day weather-wise in the city of Birmingham.
Well, that day was going to be a youth day program. The young people would take over all the duties that the adults usually do. So we was excited because we was going to sing in the choir. And that particular day, we walked to church. And it was my sister Ada Mae, and Janie, and I. And we walked to church. We was having such a good time. Janie had a little purse shaped like a football. And we was running and catching it and just laughing all the way to church that morning.
It was a very exciting time. So that energy was always there on a Sunday morning. And this Sunday morning was no different than any other Sunday morning, with the exception that the week before, the Birmingham City School System had finally been integrated.
So when we arrived, that's when we went down into the basement to freshen up.
When 10:22 a.m. rolls around, there's a telephone call in the pastor's study.
And while we was in the ladies' lounge, I was looking out the door. And while I was looking out the door, that's when I seen Denise McNair, Cynthia Wesley, and Carol Robinson. Class had just turned out, and they came into the ladies' lounge.
And she picks that phone up, and she's told, "You have 3 minutes," in a very jarring voice.
And when they came into the ladies' lounge, they spoke to us. Denise was in front of her, in front of the other girl. And she stopped where Ada was. Ada was standing by the couch in front of the window. And she turned around and she said, "Ada, tie my sash." And when she reached her hand out the side, that's when the boom, that's when the bomb went off.
The force of that blast literally was felt over 3.5 miles away from the church itself. People throughout the city knew instantly when that bomb went off because of how powerful it was.
I remember it very well. We was in church, my mother, father, and me. And my church was on the south side. And that particular Sunday, I heard this loud explosion. It shook the city.
All I could do was say, I hollered, "Jesus," because I didn't know what it was. It was so loud. Oh, that sound was so loud. It went, people think it just said boom like that, but it went boom. And it scared me so bad while that nervous was going on. That's when it just shook me all up. It just shook my nerves and everything. That's a sound I will never forget. The debris from the glass window, all that debris just came rushing into my face. It was kind of stained glass. It was one of those kinds with that thick glass in it. And it just came rushing in. So then I began to call Addie, but she didn't answer. So I heard somebody say, somebody bombed the 16th Street Church. And their voice was so clear as though it was on the inside side of the church with us. But right where the girls were standing, there was a big crater in the wall. I was kind of at least about 12 feet from them. They was all together, and I was still standing up. I know it was God, because when I see how the bomb had messed the church up, I know it had to be him, because I should have had fell down.
I think one of the most sobering things of September 15th, 1963, is that when the terrified parents went to Hillman Hospital to check to see if their child was alive, dead, injured, whatever, they were rudely, harshly told to go to the black entrance.
When I got there, this lady said I was gonna have to lay on the cot because the eye doctor wasn't there. So while I laid there, that's when Janie came in. And when she came in, I asked her, "Where's Addie?" And she said Addie had hurt her back, but she was gonna come to visit me tomorrow. So I said, okay. So they operated on my eyes, and I went on upstairs to my room, and that's when my mother was there waiting. She told me that all the girls that was in the lounge with me was all killed, and I was the only survivor.
When you look at Sarah Collins, 12 years old, in one of the most heinous parts of the civil rights movement, I think that you don't appreciate the idea that although she didn't lose her life, she lost the comfort that comes with being a child. You could never get that back. She not only lost her sister, but she lost that wonder. She sacrificed that for the rest of us.
I had so many pieces of glass in my face and in my chest and ear. I know the doctor had told me he had took out about 26 pieces glass from my face and eyes. I remember when they had took the bandage off my eyes. I had the bandage on for about 2 or 3 days. The doctor took them off. He asked me, "What do you see out of your left eye?" I said, "I see a little light." And he took it off my right eye and asked the same question. And I said, "I can't see anything." I was blinded instantly from the bomb. They released me from the hospital, but before they released me, I remember the doctor telling my mother that I would have to come back in February because they was gonna have to remove my right eye. If they didn't remove it, I would go blind in my left eye.
Should nobody, no matter what the age is, you shouldn't have to endure no pain like that. And this is something, she got to live with the rest of her life.
I was in the hospital 28 days. At night, when everything just died down, that's when I would start seeing just flashes of light, just flashes of light coming into my eyes where I would just cry about the girls, and my sister, and just wonder why Why did this have to happen?
You know, we're told that Dr. Martin Luther King was in Atlanta at Ebenezer Baptist Church, and someone came in and slipped him a note to tell him that he needed to leave the pulpit. And when he did, he took a phone call and they informed him of what had happened here in Birmingham at the 16th Street Baptist Church. And Dr. King walks back out to the sanctuary and steps into the pulpit, and he looks up into the ceiling and he asks God, "Is this why you brought me here?" And he began to weep uncontrollably. The response was to have a mass funeral. And so they gathered the families together, but Carol Roberson's family had already made plans to have her funeral at her home church. But the other three girls, Addie Mae and Cynthia and Carol, their funerals were held all together. And Martin Luther King preached their funerals.
I was in the hospital when they had the funeral, and they was telling me about how so many thousands of people was lined up at his church.
But I couldn't get in. It was too crowded. And I saw Dr. King on the porch in his black robe. And it was just a lot of people. The church was packed because, you know, you had three families and other people that was able to get in. But I was not able to get in.
Oh, yeah. I loved studying in school. You know, I was an A student. But after the bombing, it just changed everything. I just couldn't think like I used to think, and my grades had dropped real low. And, you know, as being a 12-year-old kid going through a bombing like that, it did a lot of damage to my spirit and my mind. So when I came back, they had a patch on my eye because they had to wait until it healed before they put in my prosthetic eye. When I got this prosthetic eye, it was so big until I really didn't even go outside anymore because I thought it was gonna fall out. You know, if I do any kind of moving, anything. So I just stayed in class. I didn't feel right anymore. Well, my life without Addie had really changed. She was the one that I would always be with, no matter what. We was together all the time, and life without her, it wasn't the same anymore. Oh, everybody loved Addie. Addie was a type of person that she was soft-spoken, and I never, as long as the time that she lived, I never seen her get argued with anyone. She was really the peacemaker in our family. I felt a lot of emptiness. I didn't have anybody to talk to because Addie, she was gone, and she was the closest sister that I had. But Jane and I, we got closer after Addie passed, and we would be together. But just talking about the bombing, we never did talk, just sit back and talk about it. The only time the conversation came up when she would look at me and see glass just glowing in my face. And she would tell me, she said, "Come here, Sarah, let me get that glass out of your face."
You know, you have people talking about where they were when they found out John F. Kennedy was assassinated. Well, Just imagine if John F. Kennedy were your brother and you were looking at him for the last time, and that was something that was indelible to you. That's what Sarah Collins has had to live with for over 5 decades. And that's got to be a weight that I don't think is describable.
Since it wasn't any support, I just had to grow up, because I know that going through the bombing, it changed my life. So I just had to change with it. When I go to the doctor, my doctor always tell me that the glass is still sitting there and he don't want to remove it. If anything happened while they having surgery on it and I lose it, that's when, I would be blind, since I don't have a one eye. I know I had to get a job to take care of myself, because I know that I couldn't depend on no one to take care of me. So what I did, I started getting jobs in places that I could just look like I could just hide myself in, like Founders. I did some house cleaning work. I still kind of do that now.
After the 16th Street Baptist Church bombing, the zeitgeist, so to speak, in the United States was shifting. And with that shift, the movement became more aggressive. That you're going to leave Birmingham with a mandate that was paid for with the lives of these 4 little girls. You're going to push forward to undo things in the city of Birmingham. But a great deal of that, too, had to deal with this idea that now people could see for themselves the result of the long-held anger and resentments and hate. And people were willing to open up and change from things like that.
I was angry and I was just mad at white people because of what had happened to me and those girls. I was angry with them and mad, and looked like I was blaming it on every white person, in the city of Birmingham. But I know I had to come out of that, because every white person didn't do that. There was a lot of white people that marched with us. And I remember when I changed my attitude toward them, it was something that God had to take out of my heart too. I began to go to church again. I remember when I went to church, my sister Jana was telling me about this church. And it was over in Ansley, and she was telling me how God was working miracles over there. And I got so excited, I told her I just got to go to this church. While I was there, this pastor had called me to come to the front, and he began to pray for me and began to tell me what God was telling him about me. He said that God is showing me where you have a nervous condition. And he said, and you suffer with a lot of fear. And I said, yes. And he told me, he said, tonight is your night. And I was so excited. And when he laid his hands on me, and he prayed for me, and that's when I just fell to the floor. And they say when you fall like that, God is operating on you. And what he did, God did, he took that nervous condition away from me, and he took a lot of fear from me. And that's when I began to talk about the bombing. And I had got into my 40s when that happened, when God had healed me. Oh, it felt good. Looked like I can just live again, just live and do the things that I wanted to do, because I couldn't do it in that condition. That's why so many people didn't even know there was a 5th girl, because I didn't talk about it. I wasn't looking for a husband. But I remember how George and I met, ran into each other at the post office. And he knew me.
You can't forget Sarah. We finished high school in '69. We took several classes together.
He called my name, and He was in the line at the post office. When he seen me, he got out of line and we started talking.
And looking back on it, I never would have thought we'd end up getting married, but it happened.
I feel real good because he's the type of man that I always needed, and he just helped me through a lot of things.
I thank the Lord for letting us let that day come, because I had been single all my life. I was 50 when I married, so that was a good move for me.
Justice is an interesting word. The bomb had been placed by a group of individuals with the United Klan of America. Locally, they were known as the Cahaba River Boys, because these individuals would meet under a bridge that spanned the Cahaba River. All of them were quickly arrested. They were charged with illegal dynamite possession. President Kennedy sent FBI to Birmingham to investigate the bombing, but the FBI was under the direction of J. Edgar Hoover, and Hoover was no fan of the civil rights movement. And in fact, Hoover and his men had planted wireless devices at the Birmingham sign shop. They were able to ascertain, who was involved and, where they were and what these people were doing. And he refuses to allow the FBI to participate in the investigation and prosecution of these bombers because he doesn't think that a Southern jury will convict them. And he doesn't want to besmirch the FBI's reputation of not being able to bring these people to justice. So he withholds this material. And that's going to lead to these men being released. And it's not going to be until 1977 when Robert Dynamite Bob Chambliss is brought to trial. In his trial, the testimony was that he said, after this Sunday, they'll beg us to segregate. And so there's that intention there. And he's talking about begging us to segregate because he's angry about the integration of the Birmingham City Schools. It won't be until 2002 when Frank Cherry and Thomas Blanton are going to finally be brought to trial.
Yes, I attended all three of the trials. I attended it because they wanted to know the same thing, what had happened in the ladies' lounge.
But it's important to remember that there was a fourth man in that car with them when they planted that bomb, when they planned that bomb. And his name was Herman Cash. Herman Cash lived his entire life and died of natural causes without ever being brought to trial for his role in that bombing.
She forgave them Klansmen. She told them in the courtroom she forgave them. And she's a strong lady, very strong. I love my baby because she went through something. And sure, no one at that age or whatever age you may be go through something like that.
They called me the fifth little girl. So after they heard that it was 5 girls instead of 4, I've been getting an invitation to come out to school, churches, and college to talk about that day. I don't really feel nervous or anything about it. I even go to 16th Street Baptist Church. It's important to tell the young people about it because they got to know the struggle that the people went through to have those laws changed. Because many people have died and was killed to change the laws. So young people need to know to get out and vote. But they need to know this history about how these girls' life was taken from them because of hatred. We should love each other, and I really believe that if it wasn't so much hate in the world, those girls would be alive today. But if we love is greater than hate. That's my motto. Love is greater than hate.
Almost like a wonderful photograph, but somebody had to take that picture. And the person that took the picture, that is the Four Spirits, was Sarah Collins. And she sees these four ordinary girls, Cynthia Wesley daydreaming and looking off into the distance, Carol Roberson directing them to hurry it up, Addie Mae Collins, who was 14 at the time, helping little 11-year-old Denise McNair get her clothing together for their Youth Day performance. And she's reaching up, releasing Dove. When they bombed the 16th Street Baptist Church, they didn't bomb just anybody's church. They bombed everybody's church. When I consider the totality of this narrative, I look at the way things are designed. When we think about September 15th, 1963, we memorialize it in so many different ways. In the park, there are 4 fountains representative of the 4 little girls. In the edge of the park, where the kneeling ministers are, it's surrounded by 4 broken columns that represent the broken lives lived by the 4 little girls. Spike Lee did the documentary, The 4 Little Girls. It's this repetitive 4 that doesn't allow us to see Sarah Collins as we should see her.
It still continue today. It's going back around again. It's racism in this country, and it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be at all. They can't look at us as being black and we wrong. God put us all here for us to work together, and they should know this about now. But it seems like all the hate that was done in 60s, it's just come back around again.
See, number one, love is greater than hate. We got to learn how to live together. I can't have no hatred towards you, or no one, no matter their skin color, sex, or what. We must learn to love one another. That's the only way.
Yes, I believe that was the purpose, that I was the survivor. Because, God left me to tell about what happened that day. He just left me alive to get the story right. Yes, I have a lot of hope that things can change, and it got to change everywhere.